There are no specific cases so far for environmental crimes under extraterritorial jurisdiction. This has been throughout a prioritized issue for the Ukrainians. They want Russia to pay for their war crimes, including what they've done to the environment.
Hi there, and welcome to Voices from the Institute for Human Rights in Business, also known as IHRB. I am Deborah Sago, and in this podcast, you will hear from people working to make respect for human rights part of everyday business. You've just heard from Margot Wallström, Chair of IHRB's International Advisory Council and Sweden's former Minister for Foreign Affairs and former Vice President of the European Commission. Margot is a co-chair of the high-level working group on the environmental consequences of the war. The group has just published a report outlining the essential steps to a green recovery in Ukraine. Let's hear from my colleague John Morrison, who spoke to Margot. John, why did you want to speak to Margot about this new report?
I think this report's a big deal. It's unique in that it's talking about environmental damage as a war is still going on and trying to set out accountability for what's happening. And if you're a business that has invested in Ukraine, or if you're thinking about reinvesting or when's the right time, this is the sort of thing that you should be paying attention to.
Why is this report important then to the business and human rights agenda?
Yeah, so, I mean, the Ukrainians are not looking for investment at any cost. They are a proud people. They want to build back better. They want to build back green. They want to build back responsibly. They're aware that their country has a reputation in the past for being corrupt. And there are many reasons why companies have been careful when investing in Ukraine. They're looking for a much more open economy, but one in which rights are respected, because the people of Ukraine are suspicious, I think, of investment from outside of the country. Small companies in Ukraine are worried about big Western companies coming in and scooping up all the reconstruction money. So I think there is a real balance of perspectives, and at the heart of it, if things are done well, if things are done sustainably, if things are done in a rights-respecting way, I think there is a role for business in Ukraine going forward. And this is what Margot talks about as she introduces her report on the podcast.
Thanks, John. Let's hear from Margot now, who explains why, in the middle of a war, this report on environmental reconstruction has been published.
We have to go back to November 2022 because that was when President Zelensky presented his so-called peace formula. As you remember, that contained 10 points, and it was very bold and foresighted because it happened sort of in the middle of a war that you present a peace formula, but also that point number 8 actually was about the environment. And the environment has been called, the damages to the environment has been called a silent victim of war. So I think that this was extraordinary that he mentioned this, that he also decided that there would be a follow-up. And one of the things was to put together this international high-level working group. And I have co-chaired this together with Andriy Yermak, the chief of staff of President Zelensky. And we've had members from the international community, international leaders, but also ministers and, for example, the prosecutor general as well. So I think that this will be a pioneering thing, and that he has taken on a pioneering role in 4 different ways. First and foremost, this is about leadership. It's about daring to talk about the environment, mentioning it, working on it in the midst of a war. And that is, of course, underlining the importance of this particular aspect of any war. Secondly, I think that we will see that new methods and new standards will be developed and will come about, which is about time as well. Because, for example, there haven't been any standards for measuring the damage of war on the environment. Thirdly, I think that this will be very important from a justice point of view, and the legal avenues here and the legal routes are very, very important to the Ukrainians and to make Russia pay for what they've done, including environmental crimes. And fourthly, I think that this could also be an amazing example of how you can rebuild and reconstruct in sustainable and environmentally and climate-friendly way.
So the first recommendations in the report tackle this issue of a register of damages, really, the sort of cataloguing war-related loss and damage. And the report cites a number of things: dangerous chemical releases, pollution from industrial sites, air quality around the devastation of towns and cities, the economic and ecological consequences of agricultural destruction, forests, natural reserves, obviously the nuclear threat that has been front of mind, the destruction of the Kakhovka Dam on the Dnipro River, which received, of course, a lot of attention. So there's quite a long list. But why are your first recommendations then around the cataloguing of this, the registering of damage? Why do you start there?
We have worked on 3 different work streams, and the first one was to assess sort of the damage to the environment from the war. And that is based on both experts that we have consulted and worked with, but also a lot of the work that, for example, environmental NGOs have already done, civil society has already registered in Ukraine. And the second work stream had to do with the accountability part of all of this, and the third was about reconstruction. So, of course, you have to start by looking at what are the effects. And this is the thing with the war on Ukraine, that it is at the same time both archaic and very modern. It's archaic in that we recognize the trenches and all the tanks that roll over the fields and all of the brutality that has been in every war and conflict since time eternal. But it is also modern in the way that you can actually collect evidence. You can do it by satellite images, you can do it by actually recording live, and we can follow what happens in the war in real time. And this is very important that they do that according to the best available techniques that there are. So you can, both with modern technology, you can do this, and it will also manage and take care of all the engagement that you can see from ordinary Ukrainian citizens, because they've been encouraged to actually register and film and collect evidence from what is going on. So the Ukrainian government has to establish and get an overview of what is going on, to map all of this, but also get a steer of what is going on. And I think the landmines, of course, will be one thing. And some of these events that you mentioned, the blowing up of the Kakhovka Dam, just makes this so crucial.
And this would be submitted to the Register of Damage in The Hague that's been set up by the Council of Europe. So this would become part of the sort of mainstream loss and damage claim.
They have already started doing that. So it's important that there is this register. And they have to do it by coordinating all different actors and all ministries and others involved in this to manage it in the best and most effective way.
And I believe the Ukrainian parliament has already put a figure of 56 billion euros on environmental damage.
Yeah, they have. They have been instructed to try to estimate what are the costs of environmental damage. And it is, of course, astronomical figures, you can say.
And is this cutting new ground? You mentioned earlier that this is, it is quite an unusual thing for this to happening, as the war is going. This is sort of innovative approach.
It is innovative because this hasn't been done in the kind of comprehensive way that they have an opportunity to do so. And there are no standards established since before for how to measure the effects of war on the environment. So this will be a new ground. It's important for different reasons, because they need evidence, of course, for reparations. Understand also the health risks as well, because you have to understand that this is not just sort of caring about the trees and flowers and the soil, but it is really about people's health and their well-being also in in the long run. So that is why you need that kind of overview of damages that will also assist in how you target recovery and reconstruction priorities, and also preserving evidence.
So bringing us on to the issue of accountability then, that you already mentioned, you're also making recommendations around environmental damage as an international crime. Under Article 8 of the Rome Statute, you say that Ukraine should accede to the International Criminal Code. And you're also promoting this idea of ecocide as potentially a new type of international crime. Could you say a bit more about this? This seems, again, very innovative.
When it comes to environmental crimes, they are a priority in the context of the Ukrainian efforts to prosecute war crimes. And domestically, they collect evidence in the Ukraine because it is part of also the prosecutorial strategy by the Office of the General Prosecutor. And he has been a member of our group and has contributed, he and his team, they have contributed enormously also to our work. They have investigations ongoing for this crime, if I remember correctly, a handful at this point. And this is new, and it sets an important standards also for other conflicts. As you know, and maybe you followed this, the ICC and the Prosecutor General of the ICC just announced, I think last week, that they will start to look at possibilities to consider also environmental crimes within the existing legal framework. And he will prioritize to investigate sites of alleged attacks on critical civilian infrastructure, and that could, of course, potentially include the environment. There are no specific cases so far for environmental crimes under extraterritorial jurisdiction, and this could be explored, of course. And this has been throughout a prioritized issue for the Ukrainians, of course. They, as I said, they want Russia to pay for their war crimes, including what they've done to the environment, the damage they've done to the environment. And we have discussed the ecocide also as a fifth crime under the Rome Statute, and understanding that this might take longer to get the parties to agree on that and work on that. But meanwhile, important to collect evidence, to use an advisory group of prosecutors from different countries and working on the cases that they have already opened. So I think this, again, is also groundbreaking in every way and will be followed closely, I think, by lawyers and all those interested in international law.
Then your report moves on to the issues of reconstruction, restoration, the provision of public services, a number of interesting recommendations here. And I think in a nutshell, whether the issue be infrastructure, housing, electricity, industrial sectors, transport, you're basically telling them to build back green, build back better. Is that a bit of a luxury when you're still fighting the war? And also, Ukraine, has long suffered from corruption. I know this is something that the government admits to. It has a national anti-corruption strategy. It has a number of institutions and procedures in place to tackle corruption, but it's still listed as 104th in the world. And that's bad, right? I mean, the higher up your list you are in the Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index. So there's clearly a corruption challenge that remains, and yet we're talking about building back better, building back green. And if you're a business in Ukraine or outside of Ukraine, why should you be doing this in a green way and a more expensive way, perhaps, and in a context where corruption is still an issue?
Well, maybe the simple answer is if you're not interested in building back better and greener and according to requirements for sort of meeting climate targets or sustainability targets, maybe you should look somewhere else. I think you just have to understand that they have a heritage of systems that are, historic efficiency challenges in transport, housing, electricity, the whole industrial sectors, very much of sort of old Soviet-style industries and systems, and they want to replace it. They, of course, want a modern system when everything is sort of they have seen buildings going to the ground. They want to rebuild and reconstruct in a greener and much better and more energy efficient way. So this is an opportunity. And I think that actually, and fighting corruption will be an element in all of this, and they will have to continue to fight very hard against it. But the way to do that is, of course, to make sure that you have control, that you get an oversight, an overview of the activities that are going on, that the government and the leaders themselves also can decide that this is what we really want. So that it's not like a free market for all, or that you have some shady businesses thinking that this is just a chance to earn a lot of money, but without the obligations that come from investing in a country with so many deep needs, but also with a history of corruption. So we want them to continue to move in a democratic direction, and we want them to continue on their strategy for fighting corruption. And I would say that actually clearing landmines is one of these sectors as well that are extremely important to them, and that is also something and activities that they actually have to make sure that they can control and fully understand what is going on in the country. There is a lot of money also devoted to this. So a number of governments have big budgets for Ukraine. And of course, the EU accession path is the most important one, because it means that they will introduce a sort of the acquis communautaire on environmental protection, for example, and also environmental impact assessment rules and so on. They will, of course, have an interest in making sure that these processes are shortened, that they are effective and can help them, because they are in a hurry to make sure that they can rebuild. But those are the frames within which they work.
Yes, definitely. When I've been talking to Ukrainian colleagues and giving lectures myself in the country remotely, but I've been doing that, two issues come up. One is some people are worried about the liberalization of the economy. I mean, there's a tradition of public goods being provided by the government in Ukraine, as you've mentioned. And so they're worried that the private sector will take up too much of the economic space moving forward. And also small and medium-sized enterprises in Ukraine are worried that foreign companies will come in and take a lot of the big contracts from the development money. Are there safeguards in place? I mean, do you think those are real risks moving forward?
I think definitely those are risks. And this is a difficult balancing act as well, and difficult sort of mathematics also for government. How do you make sure that the budget also has room for the things that they will have to invest in? Imagine all those that are being handicapped, they have lost limbs, and they are traumatized, and especially young people, and you will have to care for these people also in the future. So the healthcare sector or the social services that will have to be provided. And I was thinking of this because I met with somebody who produced houses that are meant for people with this kind of disabilities, and it was just fantastic houses, and also with that sort of green aspect and profile to it. And I think to give room for these actors as well will be a challenge. So I hope that the international community will accept that and also give them those opportunities as well, and that kind of assistance to them.
And then the last recommendations in the report, I would say, relate to the finance required and back to business. And you make recommendations that business should be done in a responsible way. You cite the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, the OECD Guidelines for Multinational Enterprises, the EU Directive on Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence, etc., in the context, again, of a huge amount of money needed, right? I mean, the European Union has, I think, recently estimated it now at $486 billion needed over the next 10 years for Ukraine to recover, of which $15 billion is needed this year. I believe that's additional to the money that Ukraine needs for arms and other asks. And only a third of that, only 5 billion, has so far been allocated, been secured for this year. So there's a lot of money required. Can the bridge carry these environmental and social standards, the gold plating, if you like, that you're asking for? Is that a luxury in the context of the financial need of the country?
John, I would absolutely not call it gold plating to invest in it.
Margot, you know I don't believe that.
No, exactly.
I'm being your devil's advocate here, yeah.
Yes, I'm just saying that this is exactly what we need to explain. Why is this sort of basic needs? How will they survive if they do not clean up the environment or make it possible to continue to be the third biggest exporters of grain in the world? This will also help the rest of the world with food. So it is really I think it is part of their identity as well as Ukrainians. So this will mean better health for them, better opportunities economically and socially and in every way. So this is a must. And what we are saying is, of course, that if we would see the use of, for example, frozen assets, we want to see a part of that also being devoted to the environmental sector and making sure that these investments are being made as well. So there are different sources, and of course the European Union support will be very, very crucial at this point, and that was a positive signal coming. But again, this is about planning, making sure that the money can be attributed to the biggest needs, and that it is done in a way that allow the Ukrainian government to keep an overview and control over it, but also see that this must be a sort of offer a holistic approach for the future. So there are so many accounts that need money, that be filled with money at the moment, and most of all, a continued solidarity from the rest of the world, and the signals that we will stand by Ukraine's side also now that when they have difficulties.
Absolutely. And so to finish, what next for your working group, and what are your hopes for the report and the recommendations? What are the next steps?
Well, we have been very pleased to see that it has been received in a positive way, that people think we are very concrete and constructive, and that we have based on sort of the reality in Ukraine. But we now want to make sure that we spread the knowledge about our compact, and that we implement it, because it will only be as good as its implementation, as every legal act or every document of this kind. So we will help with the implementation and follow up. And we are planning that at the moment together with the government of Ukraine.
Well, thank you, Margot. As you know, we're very proud that you're doing this as our chair, but also that you're involved in this work supporting Ukraine, and whatever we can do as a community and as an organization, we're there for you. So thank you for your time today, and I hope those people listening to this podcast will read the report, disseminate it, spread the word, and engage in the discussion of the next few weeks and months ahead. And thank you very much, Margot.
Thank you, John, and also say thank you to all of those listening and those who represent businesses or different organizations and what have you, all those interested in the future for Ukraine. And the outpour of solidarity and support and empathy with people of Ukraine has been amazing and very impressive. So I thank you for everything you are doing as well, and hope that this will continue to be there. Slava Ukraini.
You've been listening to Voices, which is brought to you from the Institute for Human Rights in Business. Until next time, be sure to share and follow this podcast, that way you will never miss an episode. And if you would like to find out more about the work that we do at IHRB, then head to ihrb.org.